All right, in this video we're going to be covering our hip flexion extension PAILs and rails. So in this case, the goal is to add more active hip extension of that trail leg. So we're going to go over how we're going to set up and execute for this movement. So for this, we'll need some pad here for the knee, so you can use a yoga mat folded up if you have the foam pad, anything to just make sure that we're not putting too much hard pressure on that knee itself. We're going to also require 2 sticks, dowels, something that we can use for support during our execution of this movement. So once we have that, couple things here. So in this case, you can see in this video, I'm using the wall here as a foot reference to help give a nice anchored position for that back leg that we're working on. You can do this without the wall as well, but the wall just gives you a good reference point. Setting up in that half kneel, what we're going to do is start about 90-90 here. So I want this heel in the front underneath that knee, creating a 90-degree angle at that front leg. Similarly in the back leg, I don't want to start with that knee too far in front of my hip. I want it either directly under or slightly behind. The arms are going to fully extend and reach out in front of us here. That's going to allow me to keep balance and also allows me to push that rib cage back to create a nice stacked position. Head is over the shoulders. And now before I start to find my current passive range of motion to get into our first passive stretch, before we do the PAILs and rails, what I'm going to do is slightly tuck that tailbone underneath me. Think about, again, the bowl tipping backwards. That may already create a nice active stretch here through the front of that hip joint. Once we find that, then I'm going to think about actively just trying to pull my body forward a little bit while keeping that back knee fixed and anchored. And as I get further into this, that's going to start to hyperextend this back hip. I'm going to make sure that I don't overextend that lumbar. So see, I can get a lot of room if I do that, but now I'm creating a lot of excessive tension in my low back. For the purpose of this exercise and movement, we do not want to do that. So make sure that when we start to find our current end range of motion, after our setup, that we're only going as far as we can while still trying to maintain a relatively good amount of that stacked position. So I may have to lean my body forward a little bit. That is okay. Once we find that position, we feel that stretch through that back leg. We're going to hang out here for about 60 seconds or longer. So go through the prescribed duration of your stretch. After a 60-second stretch, we're going to start our PAILs contraction. So before we create our PAILs contraction, we're going to first think about creating full body tension. So I'm going to take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Exhale. As I exhale, I start to squeeze the core. I'm going to create tension in my upper body. I'll squeeze the 2 sticks or dowels. I'm going to press them down into the ground. I'm engaging my glutes as well. And you're going to radiate that tension up to the prescribed percentage for you. Then we create our first PAILs contraction. The PAILs contraction, what it's going to look like is I want to think about actively trying to bring my knee up towards my chest. So if I could move it, essentially it's trying to create this upward flexion movement of that hip. But because we're trying to create an isometric, I'm pulling forward. You may see the heel come off the wall. I feel tension in through the front of the thigh, but we're not getting any movement there. We're going to do this for about 10 seconds. Then we're going to follow that with that rails contraction. So for the rails, I'm now going to think about trying to drive my leg back. So now I'm going to feel the tension change towards that back side of the leg, so hamstrings and glutes. As I try to extend that hip into the wall, at the same time, I'm going to use the front leg here to gradually pull myself a little bit further forward without, again, getting into that extensive arch. So maintain that tuck. Find your end range. After that 10 seconds, relax, take a few deep breaths here, and then if prescribed, you're then going to ramp up that tension again and perform your second set of PAILs and rails. So once again, setting up, find your end range, hold that passive stretch, then create tension, PAILs contraction, trying to pull front of that thigh forwards and up to the chest, rails contraction, trying to drive and extend that hip back, engaging the backside of the leg, maybe slightly coming forwards. Relax, hang out in that new range, and then repeat if needed.